Welcome to Small Biz Aid 2. Please enter any questions you have in our Q&A section and not in live chat. And now, introducing your speaker for the Slap Your Business Needs, Carissa Reiniger.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So my name is Carissa Reiniger. I am the founder and CEO of a company called Silver Lining. And our mission is to serve, support, celebrate, and ultimately help small businesses grow. My background is in psychology, and so I built a methodology called SLAP, a Silver Lining Action Plan, that helps business owners all around the world set and hit their growth goals. And obviously, when COVID hit, everything around trying to set goals and try and understand how to approach and handle growing a business and handling all of the complexity and the uncertainty of the times became very real. And so all of the sort of standard ways that I think we thought about business and we thought about planning and we thought about goals was questioned and challenged in a lot of ways. So we actually created a COVID response workbook, which takes our core methodology and what behavior change science really says is necessary for us to succeed, and try to apply it to the realities and the demands and the challenges of this sort of COVID, post-COVID, still COVID world that we're all living in. So I'm going to share my screen right now, and I'm going to walk all of us through this workbook together. And my intention is to make this a really, really practical and really fun session. My hope for all of you attending and listening in is that we can together really actually have a robust conversation about what you're going through in your business right now, and also how we can think to strategically and think together about getting to, the next level in your business. One of the things that we've seen that's absolutely true when we've been working with small businesses around the world over this last 18 months is that while there is definitely significant challenges at this time, the thing that has separated the business owners from sort of getting through this time and actually finding opportunity in all of the challenges is really mindset. That certain industries like restaurants have obviously had to do massive innovation. Industries like travel or hospitality have had massive breakdowns and massive shutdowns. Other industries have been really busy, but the through line in all of that, the thing that makes us all the same, or the thing that I have noticed is not different based on industry or type of business or location, is really how the business owner has approached the realities that they're facing. So we've called this a Small Business COVID Response Workbook, and sort of noted business as unusual, right? Everything went out the window. Everything's totally unusual. It's not usual at all anymore. So what do we do about that? How do we respond to that? How do we address that? So the first thing that I would just offer is that we get through all of these hard things together. We have worked with thousands of small business owners in 26 countries over the last 15 years, but in particular over the last 18 months. And the thing that, following up on what I just said previously, the thing that really stuck out to me through COVID is that there were sort of two initial responses to the challenges that we were going to face as business owners. The first was, oh my gosh, I've got to hunker down. I've got to, get rid of everything around me and everyone around me. I need to cancel everything. I just need to go into survival mode. There was another approach, sort of a second category of business owners who said, okay, we've got a big problem in the world. We are all in this together. What can I do? What can I see? What can I create? How can I contribute? And I would say that almost unanimously, the ones that went into sort of pure survival mode and sort of shut down and thought, oh my God, if I don't protect myself, I'm not going to make it, actually have done less well with their businesses than the ones who said, I'm going to expand in this moment. I'm going to think bigger picture. I'm going to understand and ask questions about what's happening. I'm going to find opportunity. I'm going to see if I can even contribute somehow. And so the first thing I would offer you is that the thing that I've always known to be true about business owners is that we can go through our challenges as business owners with an if mentality or a how mentality. An if mentality says, okay, I don't know if I'm going to get through this, or I'll try all these things to see if they work, or maybe if I try this, maybe it will work. There's a lot of sort of, I don't know, maybe I'll be a victim of circumstance, maybe it won't work. If gets us immediately stuck. If gets us into sort of victimhood, and if gets us into inaction most of the time because we just sort of don't see hope in it. How people say things like, all right, I wonder how I can fix this. Okay, I see this problem. How am I going to solve that? Okay, I see these 17 things that are coming at me and that are going to hurt my, my company, my cash flow, my revenue, my bottom line, my everything. How am I going to handle this? What am I going to do? How puts us back into action? And so what I would say is that, what the last 18 months have taught us is that we think we're not going to make it, right? We've all had hard moments. We think we're not going to survive. We think we're not going to make it. But then we do survive, and we get stronger for it. And the people who are still to this day asking how, I've got these 10 challenges, how am I going to solve them? Instead of, I wonder if the economy is ever going to come back. I wonder if I'm going to be okay. I wonder what's going to happen to my industry. I wonder if, tend to be stuck. And one of the stats I'll tell you guys, because we're a software company and because our program is online, we can have different data points about different behavior. One of the absolute number one correlating data points between small business owners who got through the last 18 months and those who really struggled was actually not their revenue. It really was their mindset. It was this determination to keep asking how. I can give you guys the example of one of our businesses actually in Long Island, New York. He's in the travel industry. His revenue went from 100% of his revenue, he's been in business for 35 years, to $0 overnight. I mean, he literally went from doing great to having $0. And his business was dramatically impacted. And we had a conversation with him and he said, I don't know how I'm going to figure it out, but I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this. He never let himself go to if. He only stayed in how. And that's as he stared at his bank account with $0 of revenue coming in. Another example is a fitness instructor that has a slap. In his world, all fitness studios shut down. There was nothing to do. It was completely done. And he just said one day, he's like, you know what, Carissa? The economy has stopped, but I have not. I'm going to find my opportunities in this. I needed to change my business model anyways. Here's my opportunity. So those are just two examples where, their businesses were dramatically impacted by COVID. Their revenue went down to almost nothing overnight, but they stayed in how mindset. And both of them are doing phenomenally well right now, despite the fact that their industries and their economies in the way that they do business have really not come back. But they've innovated, they've found new things to do, they've stayed really positive, they've gotten really creative, they've found new ways to keep selling. So that's really what kind of our mantra has become for every business owner everywhere, right? When things are hard, sometimes you got to pivot, sometimes you got to retool. We always should be innovating. We've always got to stay creative, right? Asking how keeps us creative. It keeps us innovating. And ultimately, we have to keep selling. This is one of the things that we really, really focus on at Silver Lining. And, there's a lot of conversation in the world around access to capital and how small businesses can get access to the funding that they need. I've always said that there's really three ways to bring capital into your business. The first and most important is revenue. And so even in a crisis like COVID presented, or even when things are really hard in the economy, the business owners that succeed, I believe, are the ones who get incredibly creative and keep selling, keep finding ways to generate revenue, which we're going to talk about here more. Whereas people who think that they're just going to rely 100% on debt or even raising equity investment, that's a potential solution, but it doesn't get you that sustainability that I think healthy businesses really have. So what I want to talk about a lot today is how do we keep this how mindset? And then how do we translate that into generating revenue, into continuing to sell? Because the number one thing that I think makes small businesses so special is that we have things that we're passionate about. We figure out how to productize them or servicize them, and then we sell them. We deliver them to the world. And so for all of us to remain healthy and robust, our primary goal is to keep selling, is to keep finding ways to generate revenue, even if it looks less, more, different, the same as it did before March of 2020. So that's what we want to really focus on today. Keep ourselves in the how mindset so that we can keep selling. And how do we do those two things in a practical level? So let's go to this next page. One of the big things, as I keep mentioning, but it's because it's the number one correlator to success, is just doing a reality check on how we're holding up from a mindset point of view. So we have 4 options here, and I'll just read them out loud. Are you in action and working hard because you see opportunity and want to go after it? Are you keeping your head above water and holding the course? Are you feeling actually quite scared and overwhelmed and not really sure what to do? Or are you dealing with a lot of anxiety and feeling like your life and business are in crisis and at a loss? There's no judgment, there's no right or wrong answer, but actually just being in reality about where you are and where you feel as it relates to your business is really important. And so understanding our mindset, owning it, and figuring out where we're really at is quite important. Now we go ask 4 questions about your business. Is it true that you've had to shut down and you're in the type of business that can open until we're absolutely through the crisis? You don't see any short-term opportunities? Are you finding ways to continue to do business, but your revenue is really, really low, way down from where it was pre-COVID, and you're not sure if you can sustain it? Is your business sort of shut down or totally different, but you've got the resources, skills, and assets that have allowed you to retool during the pandemic, and so now you're actually totally, thinking differently? Or has the crisis actually exposed you to brand new ideas and opportunities, and it's time to innovate, it's time to rethink, and you're excited and you're actually generating in a new way? One of the interesting things that we've learned, you would assume that the people who are sort of in the best state from the business point of view would also be in the best state from the mindset point of view. And that's not what we found. We have really found that people's mindset are totally disconnected from their business reality. And what we can learn from that is actually that the first thing we need to do is control our mindset so that we stay positive, so that we stay strong, so that we stay in the how mindset, so that we can get down to that 4th checkbox where we're finding opportunity, we're finding options, we're living in ideation, we're excited about what's happening. So we really want to be understanding that the mindset we have is probably not correlated to the reality of where your business is at. And the number one thing you can control is your mindset. You can't control the economy, you can't control COVID, you can't control other people, you can control your mindset. So how do we keep your mindset strong so that you have what it takes to maneuver your business and get creative and get innovative no matter what challenges come at you as you run your business? So I will make this available to all of you, this book. I won't go through all of this, but we actually have put together ways that you can sort of hold your mindset strong for your family, your body, your mind, and by wrapping external support around you, regardless of sort of the current state that you're in, whether you feel like you're in action, staying the course, scared and overwhelmed, or actually facing extreme anxiety. And what I think is really important about this is good, strong mindset requires action. So SLAP stands for the Silver Lining Action Plan. Everything that I believe is that big change happens, small actions over time, sustain small actions over and over again over time. And so what I want you guys to see is that regardless of the current mindset that you would say you have right now, it's in your control to hold strong in a good mindset and or to bring yourself into a strong mindset. There are actions that we can all take that put us in the type of a mindset that then allow us to handle the challenges that come at us as we run our businesses. One of the things that I started my company 15 years ago, so I've been a business owner like all of you for a long time. And the number one thing that I feel like I've learned is that the stronger I am as an individual, the better my business is, because I can run it better. I come at it from a different point of view. I come at it from a healthier point of view. And so the number one thing that I want us to be focused on as we think about going and generating revenue is actually how we keep each of you strong. What are the things that you need to put in place for your family, your body, your mind, and by wrapping external support around you that support you staying in a strong mindset, that then allows you to live in how thinking, that then allows you to combat and to manage and to handle all of the challenges that inevitably come your way. Because what I know for sure is that COVID has presented sort of an extreme level of challenge. This sort of has tested all of us beyond what we probably have been tested before. But there'll be a new challenge after COVID, sort of calms down, and there'll be a new challenge that comes at us that we probably aren't going to be ready for or expecting or having built plans for. And so, again, by staying in a strong mindset, it gives us the tools to handle whatever comes our way. Because part of being a small business owner is that it's really uncertain. We can't predict what's coming our way. We can't. So how do we start to build a short-term strategy in the midst of, knowing that we really should be building a long-term strategy? So one of the things that I'm a big believer in is that the old school model of sort of a 5 or 10-year business plan is antiquated. It's done. The world is moving too fast. And so it doesn't make sense to sit and build a 100-page, 10-year business plan. What does make sense to me and what SLAP does is it builds 1-year growth plans, 1-year action plans. So every year you sort of step back, evaluate what has happened in the last year, see where you want to go, and build a 1-year growth plan forward. So when we think about sort of a long-term strategy, we are saying, how do we ground ourselves in what we do? And then how do we set 1-year goals around that? With the reality of COVID, sometimes even a 1-year plan feels too long because there's so much uncertainty, right? Are you in a country or a state where it's fully open or only half open? Is COVID on the rise? Is it in the middle of a 4th or a 5th wave, or is it actually settling down? Are vaccination rates high or low, right? There's all these different realities around how governments are handling COVID, how the places and the neighborhoods we live in are handling COVID. And those things are changing all the time still. So sometimes we need to actually build a short-term strategy, understanding that it's not long-term strategic, but that it's going to get us through the next period of time. So the thing that I encourage you to not let go of, even if you are still needing to just do short-term crisis management, change things based on new information, the things that you want to have clear and you want to not let go of, regardless of sort of the degree of crisis you feel that you're in or the degree of short-term planning you feel you need to do, is that we want to hold on to what we do. We want to be focused on who we do it for. We want to be clear about the scale that you want to grow your business on. And then we want to ask these questions about how to do what we do better or differently so that we can innovate in the right way. So if you change what you do, who you do it for, or the scale you do it on, it's basically like starting a new business. So if we think about silver lining, right? So we do SLAPs, we sell SLAPs, we deliver SLAPs, self-running action plans, to small business owners who have revenue between $50,000 and $2 million, who are owner-operated, self-funded small businesses who want to optimize their profitability, their sustainability, and grow their finances and grow their impact. That's what we do, and that's who we do it for. We do it on a global scale. Now, if I was going to change what we do, if I was going to say SLAP doesn't work, let's do something else, or if I was going to say I want to help startups instead of small businesses, or if I was going to say I want to focus on this region instead of a global small business population, it would actually change almost everything that I'm doing. It would change I would need to change my website, probably my staff and the expertise they have, all of my internal training, all of our marketing materials, all of our sales, all of our customers would have to change. And so what we do oftentimes when we're needing to go build a short-term plan, or we're handling crisis, or we're trying to address the fact that maybe we're not getting as much revenue as we want, or we don't have the customer flow that we want, our knee-jerk reaction is to go and change what we do, who we do it for, or the scale that we're doing it on. Our knee-jerk reaction is to make these really significant changes. And that's actually really dangerous. It basically says everything that you've built so far, you're throwing out the window, and you're starting something new. You have to change everything to bring this new thing to the market, to deliver to a different audience in a different way. So smart innovation, when you have to build a short-term strategy, smart innovation says, how do I do what I do better or differently without changing what I do? I think the restaurant industry is an amazing example of this over COVID, right? So restaurants didn't all of a sudden say, my customers are different, the geographic reach of my customer base has changed, and I'm no longer going to, sell food. But they faced this incredible challenge. Restaurants were shut down. They couldn't have anyone come into their store anymore. Well, what are they going to do, right? You would think that they need to totally rethink things. No, what did they do? They figured out how to give food to their customers better or differently. Restaurants did this dramatic and very swift change to doing tons of delivery, doing takeout, putting together creative baskets so people could take their food and instead of sitting inside the restaurant, sit on a park bench outside the restaurant or sit in a park close by. So they didn't change what they did. They gave people prepared meals, right? They didn't change who they did it for. They kept their customers. They didn't change the scale that they do it on. They understood they still had to meet the regional sort of connection around their restaurant. But they, instead of sitting people inside their restaurant and feeding them the meals, they figured out how to get them the meals and feed them outside the restaurant. So that's smart innovation. That's smart short-term strategy. It's a change that doesn't throw out the what, the who, and scale, the long-term strategy. It doesn't abandon what has been built so far and what we want to keep building for the long term, but it allows for the reality and it allows for the truth that the way we were doing things doesn't work in this moment. So we need a short-term plan. We need a crisis management strategy. We need to adjust what we're doing to meet the demands of the moment. So smart innovation, the best type of innovation that I've ever seen across every business I've ever met, is never changing what you do, who you do it for, or the scale you do it on, but instead innovating how you deliver what you do. I'll just give you one more example of this. So when I started Silver Lining, we started as a consulting company. And I'm going to say things that are going to make all of you laugh, because obviously as a small business owner, what I'm about to describe, it doesn't work at all. So we had offices in 4 cities. We had 30 staff. Our overhead was really expensive because of those 2 things. And we were basically an agency for small businesses. So we used our same SLAP methodology, but we actually helped businesses by trying to implement their plans for them. So we were almost like an outsourced business development agency. But our price point was $2,000 a month. Now, no small business has $2,000 a month to give someone like Silver Lining. And even with $2,000 a month, we couldn't cover our overhead. It actually wasn't enough. The agency model, all that overhead requires having customers who are paying a lot of money, which is why hiring agencies is always so expensive. So we had this scenario where what we were doing with SLAP, who we were doing it for was small business owners, people like you. The scale that we were doing it on was global. So our who, what scale was the same as it is today. But how we were delivering SLAP, this sort of agency model, $2,000 a month, it was terrible. It wasn't working at all. We weren't making enough money. We were going into debt, and small businesses couldn't afford to pay us what we were asking for. It just didn't work. So I stepped back and said, okay, wait, how do I do what we do better? How do I do it differently? How do I do it in a way that makes more sense? How do I get our price point down but keep our value high? So we shifted to more of a training model. And so I started traveling around the world. We had corporate partners who would pay us to teach small businesses about SLAP. I would do workshops and trainings, and we were everywhere teaching thousands of small businesses around the world SLAP. Well, that worked financially. It got us in front of a lot of people. So we were still doing SLAP. We were still doing it for small businesses, still global in scale. But the problem I started to realize was, wait, my background's in behavior change science. Now we're just telling people what to do. We're not helping them at all actually implement it. And as we all know, implementation is what actually separates people from those who succeed and those who do not succeed. And so we actually stepped back after 3 or 4 years of that and said, okay, let's go back to innovation. Let's go back to thinking, how do we do this better? How do we do this differently? And that's when we started building our software platform, which we now have. So now SLAP is only $300 a month, so way lower than original. The value is way better. We have way higher success rates, and we wrap this comprehensive support around a small business owner to build their plan and then implement it for a full 12-month process. That means that the small business's success rates are way higher than any of our other models. So over 15 years, I've done sort of let's call it 2 major pivots, from consulting model to a training model to a software as a service model. Price point has changed dramatically. How we deliver the work has changed dramatically. But what has not changed is what we do, who we do it for, and the scale we do it on. So in these 15 years, we have the benefit of consistency of brand, consistency of experience, really amazing learning and knowledge. We know so much about how to help small businesses grow because we've been doing it for so long. We haven't changed our what, who, and scale. We haven't disrupted that, but we continue to innovate how we do what we do. And so that's what I want for you guys. I want you to find the strength to sort of hold strong on what you do, who you do it for, and the scale you do it on, but then really live in this this element of innovation and possibility around, well, is there a better or different way to do what I do? That is really smart innovation that allows for momentum to build over time as opposed to always starting and stopping. And that still is true when you're thinking about short-term responses to COVID or other emergencies or crises that come your way. How do you basically maximize revenue, find opportunity, figure out how to continue to stay in business, do what you do differently or better to meet the unique moment, challenges of the time without abandoning everything you've built so far, which is your what, who, and scale. So that's how we think about strategy right now. Hold strong on the long-term piece, get really innovative and creative, and go, come up with any and all ideas on how to do what you do better or differently. When you hold those two things, you can get through crisis and also respond to crisis, right? You can get through a global breakdown and find opportunity and stay in business. And so those are the things we really, really want you to hold. Hold your long-term elements, innovate, get creative, find short-term solutions that allow you to change how you do what you do, not what you do. So that's the first piece. The second piece is really understanding who your ideal client is. One of the mistakes we often make as business owners is that we keep thinking about ourselves, especially when we're going into crisis mode, right? Oh my God, what do I need? What does my business need? How am I going to get through this? And instead, what we want to be thinking about constantly, who is our customer? What are their needs? What are they going through? What is happening in their life right now? And how do we respond to that so that we remain helpful to them? We remain, in service of them. We remain what they need. So the first thing you want to be doing all the time is understanding who your ideal client is by seeing the patterns in who buys from you, pays you happily, values your work, is a real pleasure to work with, and tells others about you. Then we want to focus every dollar of your money and every cent of your time connecting with your ideal client. And then we want to say no to business that's not ideal. That's the standard strategy. Now, in the midst of crisis or in the midst of innovation or in the midst of the world has changed dramatically, the questions we want to ask ourselves are, have the realities of our customers changed, right? Are they scared to go in public spaces? Are they homeschooling their kids still? Are they working from home and so their commute looks different? Are they tired and burnt out? Are they motivated and excited? What is their reality? And now the question becomes, as we build a short-term response and a short-term strategy, or even our innovation strategy, so what do they need? Based on what's changed for them, based on where they're at right now, how do we meet their needs in exactly that way? And so getting this right, remembering that as we are innovating and creating and responding to all the circumstances around us, remembering that actually it's not about us, it's about our customer and their needs and their realities, it actually is really focusing. It's actually very helpful. It takes a lot of pressure off to just sit back and say, well, I've got to figure everything out. That's obviously impossible. And instead, the conversation becomes, okay, how do I just sit back and think about my customers? Where are they? Who are they? What are they facing? What are their challenges? What are their needs? How do I respond to those? And so when you combine this question of how do I do what I do better or differently to respond to the time, and what's going on with my people? Who are my customers? What are they facing? What's their emotional state? What's their day-to-day life look like? Where are they at and what are their needs? When you put those two things together, how you should innovate or what your opportunities could be or what your new revenue streams could be or what the things that you could sell are becomes so crystal clear. It actually takes what feels very overwhelming and confusing and becomes quite straightforward. And so that's the thing we want to really focus on. How do we take what feels really overwhelming and simplify it to a couple of these key frameworks that help you get back into action as quickly as possible? I'm just going to come over into here to see if there's any questions. So I'm just looking at the chat. I don't see any yet, but if you guys have any questions at all, please just let me know. I'm happy to answer any questions you have as we go. Coming back over here, let's talk about financial goals. So you're thinking about your sort of short-term, long-term strategy. You're remembering that this is all about your customer, and that if you're going to come up with your innovation and your creative new ideas, it's got to be with them first. Let's talk about financial goals. So in an ideal world, right, you've got a really clear budget, you've got clear projections, you know exactly what it costs you to run your personal life, you're paying yourself a salary to cover those expenses, you know exactly what your business expenses are, and you are, generating enough revenue to cover your business expenses. You've got clear income streams, so you know exactly what you sell with good standardized pricing that is fair to you and fair to your customers. You understand your costs against your sales, and you have strong profit margins, right? And every year you set a financial goal, right? And that financial goal is a revenue goal, a profit goal, and it breaks down into sales goals. So that's what SLAP helps businesses do. We sort of do that business analysis, get really clear, set those financial goals. Now, obviously, when you come up against something like COVID or the global financial crisis of 2008 or other things that happen, trying to be that formulaic and that clear about financials becomes really, really difficult. So what my advice to all of our small businesses has been, and the way that we've guided our businesses through the last 18 months, is to say, you still have to have that financial plan. You still need to really, really, really understand what your hard costs are, what your personal costs are, what the minimum amount of money you need to generate is to basically pay all your bills. We have to know that number. I call that your break-even number. That number is critical because we need to be able to answer honestly and authentically if the revenue that's coming into your business will meet the demand of your expenses. And if it won't, we need to start getting creative. Now, if you're in a position where your expenses are higher than your revenue, then you really have what I consider to be sort of three options right now. Number one, you find more ways to sell. That's always the best option. And we're going to talk about that mostly for our last couple of minutes together. So number one is we go back to everything we just talked about strategy and customers, and we come up with new revenue streams. We come up with new things to sell. We come up with new ideas. We get creative about how to do what we do, and we increase sales. That is always, always, always the best strategy. So that is always what I'm going to look at first with you. How do we not just say, well, my revenue's down? How do we say, I've got to increase my revenue, right? Or how do we shift from saying, I don't know if my revenue is ever going to come back, to saying, how am I going to get my revenue back? How am I going to increase my revenue? So increasing revenue, good, profitable revenue, always the right decision. Always, always, always the right decision. In the event that you're really struggling to increase revenue, and again, we're going to talk about how to increase revenue really shortly. In the event that you're really struggling to increase revenue, there's really two options that I think are viable options right now. One is, as I'm sure you guys know, there are a lot of grant programs out there where governments, corporations, foundations are giving small business owners short-term grants to just help cover cash flow shortages. And those are, if you can get access to those, it's great. Go for it. Do it. I think there's absolutely no harm and no shame in getting that cash injection into your business. But the caveat I always say is you have to remember that it's basically just buying you some time, right? It's not solving your problem. It's buying you time to solve your problem. So the onus of responsibility to generate revenue, to go back to the beginning, to the first thing I said, and find creative ways to generate revenue remains. But with something like a grant, that small cash infusion, it just gives you a bit more of a buffer so that you have enough time to figure out how you're going to increase your revenue and to take the action to do it. But the need to increase revenue and focus on revenue remains just as significant, even if you do get that. One of the things that I saw a lot of small businesses do in the last little while is they got a small grant. Let's say they got a $10,000 grant or a $50,000 grant from one of the amazing programs out there. And that gave them this sense of relief. And they actually took the pedal off the metal. They kind of sat back and said, well, I've got enough money now to cover my bills for 3 months, let's say, so I can breathe. The problem is 3 months goes really fast. The world doesn't change that quickly. And so they got to the end of that cash flow injection and were in exactly the same position as they were 90 days earlier. So if you can get that cash injection, hallelujah, take it, and never take your eye off the prize of increasing revenue. It's always the right decision. If you've got lots of revenue, you should increase revenue. If you've got really low revenue, you should increase revenue. If your revenue is down 3%, try to increase your revenue. If your revenue is down 100%, increase your revenue. It's just always, always the thing we as business owners need to be focused on. Increase revenue, increase sales. The last option, of course, is to go take a loan out, which I know a lot of people have done. There's nothing wrong with getting a good loan. In fact, we have a finance company. We have a company called Silver Lining Finance, and we give loans to small businesses based on their behavioral data, based on the data that we have in SLAP, not their credit scores or other financial details. So I believe in good debt as a good financial vehicle, especially if you're getting through a hard time or you're investing in your growth or you're doing innovation that's expensive. And you want to be really careful that the loans you're getting have fair terms. So if you take on a loan out of sort of a moment of desperation, which I've done in the past, but the interest rates are really, really high, all you're doing is not just delaying the problem like you do with a grant, but actually delaying and increasing the problem, because now not only do you have the same low revenue or the same cash flow problems, but now you've got this debt hanging over you that's actually increasing at a fairly high interest rate, meaning that your financial problems are actually getting worse. So again, as we think about finances in sort of the reality of the complexity of the moment that we face, it's really critical for you to know exactly what your hard costs are, personal and business. That's your break-even number when you put them together. You have to know if you're generating enough revenue to cover your break-even costs. If you are, then you can sort of get by. You can ride this out. If you're making more than your break-even costs, well, hallelujah, you got a profit margin. Like, great, keep going. If you're not, if your revenue is less than your break-even costs, then you need to jump into sort of short-term response, which always should include looking at every creative way to increase revenue, considering grants, considering debt, considering loans, but understanding that grants simply delay your need to focus on revenue, and loans actually increase your need to focus on revenue because now you have this additional debt that you're carrying, and that's growing with an interest rate that could be really prohibitive to your business. So sometimes the things that we think are the easy answers, oh, I'll just get a loan, that'll save me. It actually is not. It's a delaying and a ballooning of the core problem, which is that this business isn't generating the revenue it needs to, and we need to figure out how to get that revenue going. So that being said, this is the last topic of our session together today, which is, how do we generate that revenue? How do we keep finding more customers? How do we keep selling even in the midst of a global pandemic? How do we go about finding new customers and generating new revenue when it feels like the market's changed, the market's low, things are in flux, customer behaviors have changed? How do we do that? So the first thing is, when we think about going and finding new customers and we think about generating revenue, we so often use the words marketing or selling. How am I going to market to my customer? How am I going to sell to my customer? I want to shift that, and I want you to think about how to connect with your ideal client. How do you connect with your ideal client? Is your ideal client a local mom in your neighborhood with 2 kids in elementary school who works a mid-level job at a corporation? Is your ideal client an executive male who drives his expensive car to work every day and has an hour-long commute and he lives in the suburbs? Is your ideal client the college student who's really got low cash flow, is overwhelmed by the realities of their life? Like, who's your ideal client? And don't market to that person and don't sell to that person. No one wants to be marketed or sold to. Connect with that person, understand who they are, and figure out ways to connect with them. So in the world of Silver Lining, we have 10 connecting strategies, we call them. So we think that you can connect with your customers using media, events, loyalty programs, referral programs, hit lists, special deals, online connecting, and all of those things are a lot of the things we think about when we think about marketing and sales, but our approach to it is totally different. We don't say, you should have an Instagram account. We say, well, does your ideal client hang out on Instagram? If they're on Instagram, then yes, you should be on Instagram because that's how you can connect with them. So a lot of the things that we think we need to do to market and sell, we actually realize, and it's a huge relief, we actually don't have to if our ideal client's not going to respond to it. So the small businesses that grow the fastest and that I think grow the most strategically and with the most ease and the least amount of stress and chaos are the businesses who get really laser focused, spend every dollar and every minute of their time connecting with their ideal client, not marketing and selling to everyone. And there's some psychology to this because when we feel like we want more revenue, right? When we feel like we want more, our assumption or our belief or our worry or our fear is, what if there's not enough? I need to talk to as many people as I can and get my word out everywhere that I can to try to make sure that everyone in the world hears about me so that I get a chance of a new customer. In fact, ironically, it is the opposite. Because we're small businesses, because we don't have billions of dollars in capital, we're not a big corporation that has massive marketing budgets or massive sales teams. Our best bet is to actually be highly customized and highly focused. So when we make any decisions about how to connect with our ideal client, I always ask myself, is this going to be an opportunity to connect with them in a really direct, like really personal way? Is this going to be use of time and money that is actually going to let me talk about Slap and that is going to be with my ideal client as opposed to a bunch of other people? And I say no to a ton of what I would call really great opportunities. They'd be really fun. I'd be speaking at a conference in Hawaii, or it'd be this, or it'd be that. But they don't actually, the crowd's not my ideal client. I wouldn't be there to talk about Slap. So one of the things that we make a mistake on is that we think of everything as marketing and sales opportunities, and we think about going and doing them as business development. But actually, to be successful, to actually hit your sales goals, to actually increase your revenue, the opposite is true. You want to be really selective. You want to say no more than yes. You want to do a couple of things really, really, really well. Go deep, not wide. Connect with your ideal client where they are. Don't try to get them to come where you are. And all of a sudden, when you shift your orientation to not trying to do everything, but trying to do a couple of things, not trying to go, wide, but instead going deep, not trying to be everywhere, but instead just going to where your ideal client is and connecting with them where they are, all of a sudden, actually, your conversion rates start to go up dramatically. So you need to spend way less time and money in marketing or sales, connecting, than you used to, and you actually generate a lot more business. And so this is the big thing. When we feel like we don't have enough, our instinct is to do more. What I want you to do, which is going to be very counterintuitive and very difficult, I want you to do less. I actually want you to step back and get even more disciplined and more focused and actually just literally ask yourself the question, what does my ideal client do all day long? Where is he or she? If your ideal client's in their car nonstop, maybe you want to invest in some radio ads and test those. If your ideal client reads the local community newspaper every week religiously, try and write a column in it, right? Try and get a story written about you. Pitch that local newspaper to get into it. If you know that your ideal client is at a desk all day, do a cold call campaign. Just, do research online, make a list of 100 people, call them and say, hey, I'd love to get a chance to tell you about my business. Maybe there's an opportunity for me to work with you and support you. If your ideal client walks the same path to kid drop off every day, put a sign on that sidewalk, directing her back to your store. So when you think about who your ideal client is and what their reality is, and you think about connecting with them where they are, Instead of marketing and selling to get them to come to you, the whole orientation around how you do marketing, sales, business development, connecting changes. Instead of asking questions like, should I do social media? Should I have a blog? Should I do SEO? Should I do a referral campaign? Should I have a loyalty program? Instead of asking questions like that, I don't know, you could not. The questions instead are, does my ideal client respond well to a loyalty program? Does my ideal client read that newspaper? Would my ideal client come to that event that I'm planning? Does my ideal client get annoyed, or would they really respect being cold called? Like, who are they and how do I find them? And the big kind of aha, or I hope what you can take away from this is, if you do less but really well, if you go to your ideal client instead of trying to get them to come to you, if you think about who they are and what they need and you connect with them based on that, instead of marketing or selling to them, you can do less actions, spend less money, dramatically increase your return, and actually increase sales. We have seen so many businesses in the last 18 months who have faced every terrible challenge you can imagine, increase their sales. And it's not because they started spending a ton of money. It's not because they got a $100,000 loan and invested it all in online ads. It's not because they did any of those things. It's because they sat back, they asked all the questions that I've just posed to you over our last 47 minutes together, and they got really focused and really strategic. They figured out how to do what they do better or differently. They thought about what their ideal client's life looks like today, different than it may have looked like before March of 2020. And they figured out how to combine new offerings and new pricing and new ways of doing what they do to meet the unique needs of their ideal client. They did a really basic cash flow analysis and understood sort of, if they were going to be okay and if they weren't going to be okay, how much sales they had to generate, and if they had to do anything to subsidize their cash flow while they bought themselves time to get their sales back up. And then they thought of a couple of very, very, very clear connecting strategies that allowed them to go to their ideal client, connect with them where they were at, connect with them and their personalities and their needs and their realities, not sell to them. And they generated more sales. And it's that simple. I'm not being sort of silly. It really is that simple. That's the process we took thousands of small businesses through over the last 18 months. And thank God, I'm so proud to say, so many of them have really come through this better, stronger. Their businesses are more savvy, more structured, more sustainable. In a lot of cases, their revenue is higher than before COVID and more profitable than before COVID. And so sometimes I think when things are hard, we think it needs to get more complicated. But what I would challenge you is, when things are hard, actually get more focused. Let your focus on your mindset being strong and your strategy being simple and strategic. And if you can do that day after day after day, you'll get through anything, whatever this challenge is, right? Whatever your current COVID realities are, or whatever is to come in the future. The last thing I will just say as we wrap up, because we only have 1 minute left, is that we cannot do this alone. I started this I started saying that when we first started this. We need to be in this together. No human, myself included, anyone on the planet can do this alone. So when things got really hard with COVID, because it got hard for me too, I'm in the same boat as all of you. I doubled down on outside support, making sure I had a therapist to talk to, making sure I had, outside structure in my life, making sure I had more accountability partners to hold me accountable to keeping my mindset strong, so that I would be able to maneuver the challenges that I knew I was going to face. And so I just encourage every single one of you listening, structure, support, outside community is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of you being so strategic and realizing, oh, it's tougher right now. I'm gonna bring more support around myself to increase my chance of success. No different than hiring a personal trainer when you know that you want to get fit, right? You've got a higher chance of getting a six-pack if you've got a personal trainer than if you're just trying to keep yourself motivated on your own. So I really encourage you to up the ante, get more structure and support around you, get more outside accountability, get more peer support, not to take more of your time and not to create more, more things to do, but to get you the fuel you need so that you can do all of the things that we're talking about today. And lastly, we are here to help you in any way we can. If Silver Lining can be supportive to you, we've made our program Pay What You Can so that finance is not an issue. If you just have questions, our team will, of course, jump in and answer them for free. If you need anything at all, our mission is to serve and support you so that you can accomplish your goals and your dreams. So if there's any way we can support you, just let us know. We're here. All right. Thank you guys so much. I hope you have a great rest of the day. It's such a good lineup of speakers. And I hope that you come out of today, not just with a lot of thoughts and ideas, but ready to take action.
Wow, thank you so much, Carissa. And for those of you attending, if you want to stay tuned, we have Do the Opposite with Steve Strauss coming up shortly. Thanks so much.